Have you ever read something so terrifying, your heart rate rises, your pupils dilate, your skin crawls? Have you ever tossed and turned at night, knowing if that book was true, the world would be a very dark place? Well, I have, and it's the topic of today's video. I'm going to give you the books that I've found have attached to my brain with their horror and won't let go. Let's start off with number 4. We're going to go through Emily St. John Mandel's Station 11. Station 11 is a National Book Award finalist for 2014. I personally read it 5 years ago, and it hasn't come out of my brain since. This might be because this book should come with a disclaimer, something like if you've lived through a flu-like epidemic, then you might be triggered by this. This book describes a more serious sickness, though. One that ends up wiping out most of humanity, like 90%. This book has many points of view, including Kristen, an 8-year-old actress at the time of the flu, and shows her growing up in a world that is so disheveled that it doesn't really look like modern humanity. There's no cell phones or computers or cars that work. She's still an actress, and she goes around with her troupe in many wagons. It also follows Jevin, a person who tries to help people at the beginning of the novel, but is struck by personal loss that is very devastating to him and his character growth moving forward. And it also follows Miranda, who is the author of a comic named Station 11. There's a couple of things I like about this novel. Number 1 being it starts off in a play by Shakespeare that is King Lear. Now, I'm not really huge into Shakespeare, but there is a quote in there that goes, "Survival is insufficient." And you can really just see that throughout the rest of the novel as everything is getting torn apart from these characters. They are trying their hardest to not just survive. They're trying their hardest to have some humanity and piece the humanity that was lost 20 years ago back together. And it is such a good quote to have throughout the novel and at the beginning of the novel, just to spearhead everything that is to come. It'll really hit you right in the heart. Number 2 is the points of view shifting. Now, this book takes place anywhere from 20 years in the past before the flu to 20 years in the future after it. And it goes through a multitude of different characters, some of which I've already described to you. And it's crazy to see all of these characters and the symphony that Emily weaves as she wrote her novel that brings all of these characters not necessarily together, but in a cohesive, just crescendo of a climax, that everything just starts coming together. And lastly, Station 11 is the comic that Miranda wrote, but is given to Kristen by her ex-husband at the beginning of the novel. Station 11, the comic, parallels Station 11, the book, in many ways, and it shifts the characters' mindsets as they go through the actual novel itself. Not only giving them new perspectives, but paralleling what is to come within the rest of the novel. So let's move on to number 3. So now we have David Diop's At Night, All Blood is Black. A story about how you can descend into darkness, starting from being so good. This novel follows Alpha and his adopted brother, Mandel Diop, two Senegalese fighting in World War I. Alpha teases Mandel about his bravery, and Mandel takes it personally. In the next battle, he ends up charging out and gets wounded, disemboweled. Alpha finds him like this, and Mandel pleads for Alpha to kill him, but Alpha can't. So they sit there for hours as Mandel bleeds out. After Mandel dies, Alpha goes mad and starts a killing spree, trying to get revenge for his lost friend, trying to show him, even though there's no way of getting him back, that he's sorry. And it is just a terrifying novel to read because you're just descending into madness with this person. Things I like about this novel are that it's short, which isn't good in and of itself, but it does seem like David Diop did such a conscious job with picking out every word and every paragraph that it's so hard to see it any other way, being longer or shorter. It's sculpted so perfectly into a novel that is so concise, yet packs so much of a punch. The other thing I really like about this novel is Alpha's descent into madness. It's so terrifying when you're reading because you're so engrossed in the tragedy that this man is feeling for letting his brother die and not being able to help him even when he pleaded for it. It really just gets your heart and squeezes it so tight that it's so hard to put down. So with that, let's go on to book number 2. Here we have Stuart Turton's The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This book is not scary in the practical sense, but it is so nail-biting as you're going through it. At the start of the book, the novel's protagonist wakes up in a forest screaming this girl's name, Anna, Anna, Anna. The thing is, not only does he not remember who Anna is or why he's screaming her name, he doesn't even remember who he is and where he is. After a tumultuous first day of trying to get back his memory and finding this creepy mansion to go back into with other inhabitants, he falls asleep, only to wake up the next day in the body of the butler. And the next day is actually the day prior, as he is starting the day over again. Being told by a mysterious man that he has 7 days and 8 bodies to figure out who killed the daughter of the owner of this mansion. If him and his 7 other hosts are not able to figure it out by the time they're done, the process starts all over again. Things I liked about this novel. I did not want it to end. This is the biggest book on this list, and I still could have read it multiple chapters more. It is amazing how many endings were cliffhangers that you were not expecting, that came out of nowhere, and it shattered everything that you knew about the world that is being built by Stuart. There's a quote in the novel, and it goes like this: "If this isn't hell, the devil is surely taking notes." And that's exactly what every chapter of this book felt like. It was like the character was going through hell, and then at the end, there was just some other thing that happened that made it more hellish. It was a masterclass of just making so many terrible barriers to this person solving the mystery of this woman's death. Secondly, the different points of views of the characters, which were actually only one character. I think Stuart did such a good job of making sure that all of them had a backstory that was so well developed that it bled into the character as he embodied them. And sometimes that is funny, and sometimes that is terrifying. The people that he goes into range from people who have horrible backgrounds, some that have done terrible things, blackmail, drug dealing, stuff like that. And all of them happen to change the main protagonist in ways as the novel gets progressively and gets more progressively towards the end. Lastly, the ending. I did not want this novel to end, and I'll say it again. I did not want this novel to end. It was so well written in just everything that was going on inside of it. It was amazing just to keep going through it, to see what Stuart would throw at you next and what he would throw at the characters. But the novel did come to a close, and the ending was actually really good. Something that I wasn't necessarily expecting, but something that was better than I expected, for one. And it was able to be figured out by the clues that you get within the novel. Though I was not as astute, maybe as some readers were, this took me by surprise, but it was a great surprise, and it definitely made me, looking back at the novel, that much more enticed by it. So with that, let's move on to book number 1. Here we have Robin Rose, Darkroom Etiquette, the most mind-captivating book I have ever read. 16-year-old Sayer Wyatt has everything, being the son of a business mogul. That is until he gets kidnapped. Trapped in a windowless room, Sayer has to come face to face with a terrifying reality that he has to forget his old life and play by his abductor's rules without losing himself in the process. There are so many things that I liked in this novel, but also those same things are some of the reasons I disliked it so much. And by dislike, I mean cringe at. For instance, number 1 is you're in Sayer's head the whole time. As he gets kidnapped and as he is with his abductor, you're there with him. You're in that dark room. You're in that basement. They say that books can be keys to a whole new world. In this case, that world is just a dark basement room. You're down there for days, months, years, being in a closed room, alone with your thoughts, which are Sayre's thoughts. And sometimes you don't even like Sayre's thoughts. You know that he's doing the wrong thing in that situation, but it's what's happening, and it's the only thing you have within the confines of that book. And Robin Rowe does it so well, but it is so terrifying. It's so creepy. Secondly, the thing I like about this is there's a twist within the novel. Something that you aren't really expecting, and it happens. On a dime, it happens at the end of one of the chapters, and both you and Sayre are just unbelievably tripped out by it. And there's a lot of good endings of the chapters, but there's one major twist that really takes everything to a whole new level. This is something I don't want to spoil for you guys, but it's definitely worth reading up until that point. And once you're even at that point, you're done. You're gonna finish the novel just to see how it goes. And lastly, this one comes with the spoiler alert, because this happens more towards the end of the novel. I'll put a timestamp so you can skip to that part of the video if you even have an inkling of reading this novel, which I highly recommend you do, as it is the first one on the list, and it is by far the most creepy one of the whole bunch. However, I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to get there. So here's the spoiler section. The spoiler is he gets out, but that's not even half of it. Sayre gets out, but he's not free. The last 30% of this novel is dedicated to him after he has gotten away. But in my opinion, it's one of the most terrifying parts of the book. You see, a decent portion of the beginning of the novel was given to him and his relationships with his family and his girlfriend and his friend, and the friends that are there because you have money. And when he comes out, all of these relationships really seem to flip on their head. None of them really seem to be good or grounded in the way that they were before. All of them seem to have lost so much in all of their interactions, and there's really no way for him to grasp the idea of what they used to be like and what they should look like as far as relationships going forward. The captivity that he was in screwed up his mind so much that having these relationships are just unfathomable to him. Even the ones that he wants are just not okay because he doesn't know how to act anymore. And a lot of this stems from him having that privileged life, and then now that he's a little screwed up, the friends that were there because of money or privilege, they just decide to go away. They just don't care about him anymore. He's at his most scared and most lonely, and there's nobody there to really help him. He's so lost in a world that he used to be so sure in. And it's terrifying to read, because a lot of movies and books, they have this awesome crescendo of an ending where these people get out of, captivity or being kidnapped, and they see this light and they go towards it, and then it fades to black as if they lived happily ever after. And that's not the case. That's not the case with this novel at all. He goes through a similarly dark time when he gets out, and it's super scary to read. You want to think that once he gets out that everything's good, but it doesn't end up like that, and it's so scary to see what it becomes. I'm not saying all of it's bad, but it's just most of it you're just not expecting coming out of that captivity. You want him to be able to just rejoin and reintegrate with society and his old friendships, but they're gone. Moreover, there hasn't been a novel in my memory that I can really remember crying at until this one, because of this. When you're with him in the room, you get it. You get why stuff is so bad and why his mind is so messed up. But when you get out, you expect things to be normal again, and they're not. And it sucks. It was just so heart-wrenching to read that, and just thinking that this is what happens to some people, that they do get kidnapped and then they come out, and is that their life? Is that what really goes down? And it's just terrifying to read. And it just grabs your heart, and it just yanks it apart. I honestly am so glad that she wrote the end of that novel. It was so captivating, and in some places cathartic, in other places just mind-blowing and terrifying. She did such a great job with it. I highly recommend this book. Please go and read it. It is a masterwork of just in-depth what is going through somebody's mind as all these tragic events take place. So there you have it. The top 4 creepiest novels I've ever read. I hope that you pick one up, you enjoy it, you cherish it, you stay up all night with goosebumps crawling all over you. Now go grab one and don't sleep well.